Hi, my name's Clifton. I'm an alcoholic. And I'd like to thank Maurice and the committee and all you guys that paid your dues to get us out here. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. And we really appreciate it. We've had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time. It's a beautiful country. It's no wonder you're all spiritual giants. Well, that's what Maurice told me anyway. And I've just loved everything about it. It's just a great bunch of people and a great committee and everything. The only thing is this sound system sucks. But I criticize no man. There's one guy that's out in the middle there that always tells when he can't hear. They ought to have him be the speaker. They wouldn't need the damn mic. I can't hear ya! I'll do the best I can. I'll talk as loud as I can and enunciate clearly. It's gonna be tough on the front row, but the hell with them. Well, I've alienated 3 or 4 already, so what the hell? I thoroughly enjoyed the other speakers. I just loved every minute of it. We've had a wonderful time. My Al-Anon and I. I always like to introduce her as my Al-Anon. You know how they introduce us? Have you met my alcoholic? Sit up, boy. Sit up, sit up, sit up. Tell them how long you've been sober. But, oh, hell, she's improved a lot since she came to Al-Anon. Oh, a lot of you heard her today. What Popeye say, you'll hear the rest of the story. I don't ever argue with my wife at all about the drinking days, because I wasn't there. My life has been hearsay most of my life. Wasn't yours? I spent most of my life saying, I did? Oh, I'm sorry. You know, they have books name it all. Our books, it says, as Bill sees it, and Lois remembers. And Pat remembers. But, oh, she used to be awful. Remember when we were drinking? Remember the Al-Anons then? You remember that Al-Anon grimace? Don't you think you had a few too many? I used to say, you had a few too few. That's your problem, lady. Have a couple and loosen up, for God's sake. And she was a counter. That's what I hated the most. That's your 5th one today. Just shut up and eat your breakfast, will you? Leave me alone. So I said, she's improved a lot. I think I'll tell you about my first drink. That always wakes an audience up in an AA meeting. So I took my first drink. Did you ever try that with a normie bunch? Say, when was your first drink? The normie goes, why? You know, like you wouldn't get all excited about my first taco. But the first drink's a big deal to us because it was the beginning and the beginning of the end. And I was 16 years old. A sponsor guy got sober at 16 now. You know, they get a little run at it. But I was 16. I was raised in an alcoholic family. Really? Oh, yes. An Irish Catholic family. Oh, my God. One for us, they'd have this thing in a phone booth. But, there's a genetic tendency. All the geneticists say, if you can read in the last 15 years, you know that alcoholism has a genetic tendency. It's supposed to be a recessive gene. In my family, it's a dominant gene. It's a little blue gene down at the end of the chromosome going, hey, hey. Only has one thing to say, one more. But I was raised in this alcoholic zoo. It was a madhouse, and I said, I'll never be like them, remember? And then when I was 16, I drank a half a pint of 10 High, that elixir of the gods. I remember I swallowed it 9 times. Now, Normie would have said, oh, the hell with this, you know. But I kept it down. And I went to this high school dance. I was 4'11". I weighed 89 pounds. And I was only 2 girls in the school I could dance with that were small enough, you know. But not that night, baby. That night I danced with them all. Come on, baby, let's go. I didn't care where my face was. I went out there and I danced like... And I did a lot of that bumping that night. Remember that? Hey, watch where you're going. Remember that? And the other guys, macho guys, here, hey, watch it. I bruised several guys' knees that night, and I had the greatest time I ever had in my life, and I thought, now I know why my folks drink. And so the next time, within 3 weeks, I got a chance to drink again, and I drank a 5th of port wine all by myself. And it worked marvelously. I had a blackout. And they tell me, my life being hearsay, they took a little while to find out all the things that we're out at this beach party out by Bakersfield, California, by the river, and I tried to whip every guy there, and they beat hell out of me. And I tried a couple of the smaller girls, and they whipped me too. And then later that night, I tried a deputy sheriff. And I woke up at the age of 16 in the Kern County Jail in the morning, beaten beyond recognition. Someone had puked on my chest. I never caught that guy in all the years I drank. I ever get him. And they're rattling the bars, you know, to wake him up. Can you imagine the terror, being 16 years old, just lying there on the floor of this prison cell? And I'll never forget what I said. I said, I'll never do that again. Yeah, raise your hand. And you started this audience participation here, you ass. I work alone. Talk to him. He's the one that likes audience participation. If he raises his hand, break it. And I don't want to bore you, but that's kind of my drunk-a-log. That's the way I drank. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of times, I had a good time, man. I was a fun drinker. Remember that? Love to say that in an AA meeting. Fun! All their eyes glaze over, they all go, oh, yeah, yeah. A little slobber runs out of the corner. Don't say that in an Al-Anon meeting. No, 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 no. No, no, they don't like fun. They have fun. But you know what I mean. You drunks here know what I'm talking about. You know fun. Like getting beaten to a pulp and go to jail. Fun! Finding your car at the bottom of a ravine in the morning. Remember that, huh? With you in it. Fun! Almost died of it. One more good time, you'd have a different speaker tonight. I met Pat, my wife in college, San Jose State College. She was down on Skid Row looking for an alcoholic to abuse her. And You're looking to be abused. Here's your guy right here. I was saying, and we entered this 20-year suicide pact. And as she said this afternoon, we had that dreaded dual disease, alcoholism and Catholicism. And consequently, we had a kid every 9 months and 20 minutes. Greatest losers of Vatican roulette the world has ever known. Seemed like every time I came out of a blackout. What the hell is that? And they're all right when they're little, you know, like kittens. But they grow, you know. And the older they got, the weirder they got. And God knows the weirder she got. And I was the head nut. I later on became a school teacher. This is a guy who commits felonies in blackouts. Just a hobby, what the hell, you know? But you know, when you're a school teacher, they frown on that. They call you up to Sacramento and take your license away is what they do. So, I hated blackouts, and I tried to avoid blackouts. I had a few, but I tried on. I would even do desperate things like eat. And so I've avoided a lot of blackouts through the years. I like to remember the part of my drinking, though, the last 10 years, let's say, when I had to drink every day. The only way I could survive in the world was to drink every day. And so I was a daily drunk. I was a very successful school teacher, if that's not an oxymoron or something. I was very good at it, and I loved it, and I was very successful at it. We moved to Oceanside, California. We're here from Oceanside to Ocean City, okay? All one word, Oceanside. It's just 30 miles north of the city of San Diego, 50 miles from the Mexican border. And that's where we moved in 1961. And I went to work at Oceanside High there and had a very successful career. Became a surfer dude. Had to give it up when I was 73. Oh, you should have seen me out there the last couple of years. Had this 5-way bypass, and I'm kids love me, though. The kids love. Help Mr. Roach back on his board. There you go. You know. But I was this surfer dude, like all macho drunks would be, you know, and I loved surfing. And another teacher and I got this little surfboard shop down on the beach there in Oceanside. We're going to rent surfboards and repair surfboards and give surf lessons and sell surfboards, make a fortune, never have to teach school again. And the mayor of the town owned this little building, and it had been a bar right on the water, right on the beach. And he gave it to us. You know, he was just sitting on it to make $1 billion, which he did later. But it was all beat up, and we had to paint it, you know, and fix it up and put windows in, and we got a refrigerator. A few months later, we got some surfboards, too. And we had these 2 chaise lounge chairs, can you imagine, right on the beach for a couple of budding drunks. Can you imagine a deal like that? We used to measure sunsets by martinis. I used to mix them. I'd say, looks like about a 8 tonight, Woody. Somebody'd come down and say, I'd like to rent a surfboard. Screw off, Charlie. We're watching the sunset now. Real tycoons, you know. The best one we ever had was a 15 martini sunset. You should have seen it. It was glorious. And the sun and Woody and I went right together. They found us in the morning with sunburned mouths. You remember that? I always thought that should be on the 20 questions. You ever had a sunburned mouth? Nah, get the hell out of here. You're not ready yet, you know. But we did real well with the shop, but in February of 1965, I went down to the shop to repair a board was freezing cold. We were back teaching school again. And Sunday morning, I had a hangover. Oh, really? Yes. And I was really thirsty. Oh. And I went to the refrigerator to get a Coke or something because I was so thirsty. I wasn't a morning drinker in 1965. I was a weekend drinker, remember? Took Wednesday off. But I opened the refrigerator, and Woody had been there, my partner had been there the night before, and he left about this much vodka in a half-pint vodka bottle, and there was some orange juice in the refrigerator, and I thought that would put the fire out. There was only enough for one little drink. My dad would have called it a lick and a smell. And just mixed a little, and drank it down. And my new guy here with 5 days, and there were some other people in their first month. Oh, how'd they get you here? I didn't. Remember my sponsor said, we're going to a roundup. I thought, who wants to ride jackasses or what? You know. He dragged me kicking and screaming. Only to the first one, though. After that, I came on my own. I think conventions are the greatest thing in the world when you all get together and just laugh our butts off, huh? But anyway, welcome. And I want to tell you about that booze, that little, probably was a half a shot, probably what it was of vodka. But it went down in there, and I'm sanding away on the board, and that little bit of vodka kind of went, you know, circulate around in the body. Then it went, and my mind talked to me. My mind said, shame on you, Cliff, shame, 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 shame. That was Woody's booze you drank. Why don't you go up to the liquor store and get your old pal Woody a pint? That's the kind of guy I am. You know? That afternoon, I got Woody a fifth. And I ended up just bory-eyed drunk, my dad used to say, just crawling around on the floor, resin all over me. The board was screwed forever. The shop was a mess. Crawled home on my hands and knees 11 blocks. Got up the next morning sick and dying. Said to my pre-Al-Anon wife, who was in the final stages of pre-Al-Anonism, had one of those pre-Al-Anon eye ticks. Couldn't let her go downtown. It's a Marine town. Couldn't let her go downtown. And I said, I got to do something about my drinking. I'm getting drunk when I don't even mean to, because usually I meant to. And she had cut this little thing out of the paper about the A&A. I don't know why she thought to do that. And it said what it's always said, the only ad we've ever had: if you want to drink, that's your business. If you want to quit, call Alcoholics Anonymous. As far as I'm concerned, that's perfect. We're not a treatment center. We're not a do-gooder society, you know. We're not even very nice people. But if you want to quit, we'll go to the end of the earth for you. This room's full of people, if you're new tonight, that'll go to the end of the earth for you. They'll give you this damn thing whether you want it or not. They'll give it to you with an enema, for God's sakes, you know. But if you'd rather drink, I don't care. You know, if you'd rather drink, that's your business. But anyway, I called the A&A. And I've often said it's there in 1965, and it's never been necessary for me to drink since that day. I drank a lot, but it wasn't necessary. Old Stan came out and got me and took me to meetings, and very small meetings in those days, and not many of them in the Oceanside, Carlsbad area. And they were, you know, like 6 or 8 dodos around a table, and they had the collective IQ of an orange, as far as I could tell. Because, you see, I'm highly educated. I have degrees, you know. And I tried to help them. About the third night, I was laying a little Nietzsche on them, and this guy said, "Hey, we keep it simple here." I said, "No." You gotta be kidding me, Leroy. Do. So I hung around. I didn't drink for 5 months. I almost caught on fire. I got so dry, you know. And but it just they kept talking about being a simple program. I don't like simple. I don't like simple music, and I don't like simple poetry, and I sure as hell don't like simple people. So I finally resigned from AA. Ever done that? Really strikes terror in their heart, doesn't it? Cliff who? So I'm going to save you a lot of time. For the next 5 years, I'm just a loser. I'm an AA loser. I'm one of those overeducated, smirking. I had the loser smirk down. I love to go into prisons and jails and see them smirk. You know, they're sitting there in their paper slippers smirking at me. Oh, I love that. And everything at the wrist. But anyway, I smirked my way in and out. I'd come to AA for 30 days and be drunk for 2 years. That's a slip. Then I'd come for 40 days and be drunk for a year, and it was just horrible. There was a little guy named Bill Blake, this little electrician there in Oceanside. Every time I'd come, he'd try to help me, and I just thought he was a weirdo and brushed him off. He was always asking me if I wanted to go up to L.A., 100 miles away. God, it's boring enough in these meetings. You want me to drive for 2 hours to be bored? Anyway, they kept telling me if I'd come in here, and they'd say, if you go back out, it'll get worse, and I'd go back out, and it got worse. Then I never learned. If they ever have a Losers Hall of Fame, I'll have a bust right by the door. Just a loser's loser. I'm one of those. I almost died of alcoholism because I am a functioning alcoholic. Probably 95 to 97% of you in this room are just like me. The experts, whoever the hell they are, an expert is a guy who's still drinking who has a PhD. Okay. But the experts claim that 95 to 97% of us that die of the disease of alcoholism, that become dead from alcoholism, are people like me, functioning alcoholics. Guys who get up every day and go to work and do the job and come home every night and get bombed and get up in the morning and puke and go back in there and do it again. And I do it better than you. I do it better than anybody. I got to do 10 times more than you to prove I'm half as good. Anybody identify with that? You're sick, but you're in the right place. You're in the right place. I'm a goer and a doer and an achiever, a functioning alcoholic. My buddy at home said a functioning alcoholic is one whose wife works. Don't tell that in an Al-Anon meeting either. The week I came to Alcoholics Anonymous this time, I weighed 163 pounds. I had 4% body fat. I used to surf for like 3 hours and then get out and run 5 miles. I could bench press 285. Took me 25 minutes to pass a mirror. For God's sakes, don't ask me for directions. I say, yeah, it's right over there. My daughters used to get money from me all the time. They waited till I didn't have a shirt on, which was most of the time. And they'd say, V up, Daddy, V up. And I said, oh, can I have $10? Yeah, sure. And I was sober 2 years before I figured that out. And I was an Adonis. AA is maybe twice the man I used to be. My liver was gone, but the rest of me looked great, you know. And I was at that time when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, one of the top 3 debate coaches in the United States. Oh, that's roughly equivalent to being one of the top 3 prostitutes in Elko, Nevada. But among speech coaches, it's a big deal. You know. I became a top speech coach by accident. The principal called me in one day, which he was wont to do, and he'd gotten this flyer in the mail about a debate and a speech tournament, which was being held just down the road at San Diego State College, 30 miles away. And he said, I was teaching a speech class, so he said, why don't you take your kids and go down to that? They'd probably get a lot out of it. And I was in big trouble, so I said, what a good idea. And I found 6 or 8 loonies that wanted to go, and I loaded the car. We went down to 30 miles. We got down to the San Diego State College. We were amazed. There were like 50 schools competing in this thing, maybe 500 contestants, all the boys in 3-piece suits with vests and ties, the girls in these lovely business suits, wearing Levi's and sweatshirts. What the hell do we know? And they killed us. They slaughtered us. We did not win a round of debate. They ground us in a dirt, what they did. I don't know what kind of drunk you are, but I don't care for losing. It ticks me off to lose. And I'm steamed anyway, and I go in the coach's room. There's about 25 of them there, and they're all old buddies. They've been doing this for years. They're buddies, they're pals, and they snubbed me. It seemed to me. So I hung around all day. You know how we are. They snub you more that way. And one guy there really ticked me off. He had a lot of hair. That pissed me off right away. A lot, you know, those beautiful gray hair, you know, steel gray hair, not a hair out of place. Took 9 barbers to get it right, you know. Had about $1,000 suit on. The other coaches did this when they went in front of him. And finally, about 2 in the afternoon, this guy turns to me, this gray-haired guy, says, "Where are you from?" God, I was grateful to be spoken to finally. I said, "Oceanside." And he said, "Oh, where's that?" 30 miles up the road. Where's that? I don't know what you're like, but he gave me a resentment. I don't mean a resentment, I mean a resentment. And I went back to Oceanside High, and I built a speech team, and never a day went by I didn't think about that gray-haired SOB down in San Diego. I didn't just build a speech team, I built a juggernaut speech team is what I did. I built a powerhouse speech team, and I did it with sheer hatred. I'm in their faces all day. I'm screaming and yelling, coaching. The guy next door said, "I'd love to watch them leaving your room wiping the spit off their glasses." Reporter said to my captain one time, "What's the secret of your coach's success?" The kid said, "Terror." She's the chairman of the speech department and the chancellor of women's studies at San Francisco State College today. Didn't do her any harm. Few bruises on her butt, perhaps, you know. Poor old Bobby Knight, they fired him for just choking one guy. I don't know. And it was a guy. But anyway, do you know how much work that is to make 150 people do what they don't want to do? Oh, that's hard work. That'll wind you up, especially if you don't eat all day and drink 400 cups of coffee, and stay pissed off. Out in the glove compartment of the car, see, I'm a functioning alcoholic. I don't drink all day. I just have to know that half a pint of hot vodka is in the glove compartment when I get through here. And it would just call to me all day, "Go get him, Cliff, baby, I'm waiting, darling." I love to talk about hot vodka to Al-Anon meetings, you know. They go, "Yeah." But you and I know, And would just call to me, and I'd finish that last kid in the evening, and I'd get out in that car and light up a big cigar I smoked in those days, and I'd took half pint, just drink it down, blah, 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 puff on that cigar, and I'd think, damn, you're a good coach. And I'd finish that half pint, and I'd sit there in the darkness of my old 58 Chevy surfing wagon, and I would have my 8 minutes. And I never told anybody in AA while I was slipping out in and out as a loser, I never told anybody about the 8 minutes. From the age of 16 on, whenever I drank about a half an hour, something happened to me. I would have about 8 minutes where everything in my life was all right. I was okay and you weren't so bad either. You know what I mean? There was 8 minutes in my life every day where I was enough. Now, a lot of times it went bad right after that, you know what I mean? But in the sitting there in the darkness of my car, I'm convinced that if I hadn't had the 8 minutes, I would be in prison today or I would be dead. I would have had to kill you or you would have had to kill me. That's the way it was. I'm very grateful I'm an alcoholic. I could have just been crazy. But booze did it for me. I could live through anything if I have the 8 minutes. And while I'm on that topic, I hear people many times in AA, I think Roger was talking about it the other night. He said that booze quit working for him. And I hear men and women talk about that a lot of times, and I believe them. I don't doubt them a bit. But I want to tell you, booze never stopped working for me. It worked for me the last time I drank it just as well as it did the first time I drank it. That's why I just stay really active in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because if I shine things on just a little while, that little pea brain of mine says, hey, Cliff, remember the 8 minutes? And I better get to a meeting right now. Because booze never quit working for me. And I would sit in the darkness of that car and have my 8 minutes, and then I'd go home and destroy my family. We had these 5 kids, and I'm a violent drunk, and I'm a sarcastic, mean, critical, rotten drunk, and I got drunk the last 7 or 8 years every night at home. And we were all crazy. Pat alluded to that this afternoon. We had 3 kids in high school. We're talking now the late 60s, okay? We got 3 kids in high school. The oldest son working his way through high school as a hashish salesman. Never had to give him any spending money, I'll guarantee you. Unless you hit him up for a fifth about once a week. Yeah, Dad, had hair down to his butt. Head went like this all the time. Called his mother man. Hey, man, what's for dinner? Oh, he loved LSD. Took LSD like popcorn. They're really weird, those guys. I'd be right in the middle of a sentence. He'd say, what was that? Of course, the shape I was in, I said, I don't know. What was it? Where? What? My drunken mother-in-law lives, and she would say, I'll explain it. And it was just a zoo. It was a nut house. I can't even describe how crazy we were all. We were all just nuts. Every time they read chapter 5, ABCs, I always say, no human power could have relieved my family. It was too late. It was too late for the Roaches, not Freud, not Jung, and not working together. All the psychiatrists in the history of the world could not have saved my family. My family was gone. Alcoholism destroyed us. But I built the speech team. And in a couple of years, we won one of those. I'm dying of alcoholism, you know. In a couple of years, my team wins one of those tournaments. But I didn't say anything to the gray-haired guy. Wasn't time yet. The next year, there was 12 or 14 tournaments, 30 schools in each tournament. My team took first place in every single tournament. I can wait. I think revenge is better than Christmas, don't you? The next year there was a tournament. There were 25 schools competing in the tournament. My team scored more sweepstakes points than the other 24 schools combined. Then I went up to the gray-haired guy and I put my nose right against his and I said, "Do you know where Oceanside is now?" And he just looked blank. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Don't you remember 4 or 5 years ago you said to me, Oceanside, where's that?" And he said, "We just moved here from Nebraska. I didn't know where it was." That's the story of my life. This guy's for 4 or 5 years is in his bed in San Diego every night. I'm up in Oceanside. I'll get you, I'll get you. Shall I tell him the story, honey? I almost never tell the story, but you're too great. I got to tell you. Well, a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, I had a prostate trim. And this guy messed it up. He was a butcher. And I suffered in silence for a long time. And so finally one day I just had enough, you know, and I picked up the phone and I called the doctor's office. The little girl answered the phone and I said, "This is Cliff." I said, "That quack screwed things up." I said, "I'm in a lot of pain here." And I told him where the pain was and where it moved to and how it felt. I did about 10 minutes, screaming and yelling. Wound it up by saying, "I even wet the bed a couple times. I didn't do that when I was drunk, for Christ's sakes." There's a long pause on the other side. And the little girl said, "Mr. Roach, this is your eye doctor's office." I got to tell you about the growth here. I laughed so hard I almost died. And she got laughing, and we sat on that phone and laughed for 10 minutes. Then I went in the office a couple of weeks later. He's right over there. I said, "Evelyn, I'm Mr. She said, oh, hi. And everybody else in the office went, yeah. What a fink. The ability to laugh at ourselves. What a gift, huh? What a gift. It's a good thing I appreciate it because I get a chance to do it a lot. But right after I had that incident with the speech coach, Pat talked about it this afternoon. We had one of our main events, which the neighbors have come to miss so much. Our neighbors never got television until after I got sober. They didn't need it. You know, we were the entertainment. You know, they all had those Venetian blind marks on their forehead, you know, from watching. And I threatened to move out, and they all said, "Yeah, go for it, Dad, woohoo!" And I moved out. I'm living down at the beach where I'd wanted to live with my surfboard, and I'd said for the years if I get rid of her and those dope fiend children, I'd be okay. And it wasn't working out. I was drunk all the time. I was missing work, which I'd never done. That was my point of pride. And I went by the house one afternoon. I was haranguing Pat about money, and the hashy salesman was kind of bobbing in the background there, humming a tune from the planet Pluto. And I turned to him and did maybe the dumbest thing I ever did in my life. I said, Dave, what's it like not to have your old man around the house? Dumb question. Because he looked me right in the eye and he said, it's beautiful. And I didn't know it for several hours, but that was my bottom. That's as far as I'm going, folks. Kind of a weenie bottom, but what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I mean, if you're on death row or something, oh boy. Lucky for me, it's enough for me. I went back to that dump on the beach and sniveled and whined and pissed and moaned and griped. But I went out and sat on the screen porch and I watched the most beautiful sunset to this day I have ever seen. And about the time that the sun was going down into the water, I had what we all have had, I assume, AA or Al-Anon. I had what our big book calls the moment of clarity. Polly, my friend out in Seal Beach, calls it the moment of grace, the gift. It's all a gift. It's all free. But I had to surrender. And at that moment that sun went down, I just went in the bedroom and dug out the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had read it in one of my travels through the program. And being an English teacher, I thought it was very poorly written. I want to tell you, it read a lot better this time. And I read the big book for 3 days and 3 nights. I called in sick. I didn't eat. I slept a very little, and I read the big book. I read it cover to cover for you new guys. I read all the stories. I read the appendix in the back. And in the second edition, there was a story called The Professor and the Paradox. He was another egotistical school teacher, and he saved my life. And on the third time through the book, on the 13th of January, 1970, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was on page 63 again. And on page 63, there's a little prayer, and that prayer is called Step 3. I've always called it the formal terms of surrender. And I knelt down on that filthy linoleum floor on that dump or on the beach where I was living, and I read that prayer out loud to myself. I read, God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And I was 43 years old at that time. And I had locked myself in a prison before I was 4. I know that it was before I was 4 years old. I'd build a wall, I guess, to keep you out. I'm not interested in psychological reasons. But all I had done is build a prison to keep me in. I could not get out of there. You know, and Dick's wife, Peg, says, alcoholism is the only prison where the locks are on the inside. But I read that prayer out loud to myself, kneeling there at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 13th of January, 1970, and the power that runs the universe came into my life. It came into my life because I asked him to come into my life. I gave it up. I was out of answers of my own. I had no more solutions to my problems. I was whipped. Booze had kicked my butt. And I felt that power enter my life, but nothing big, no, I searched for years about what that felt like. 32 years I tried it. And about 2 years ago, a little girl in Cincinnati in the Grapevine talked about kneeling down in a treatment center. She was 22 years old, sober 5 years. She talked about kneeling down in this treatment center, and she said, she took the third step prayer just like I did, and she said, I was enveloped by a great laughing love. I went, there it is. There it is, a great laughing love. And I have not had a drink since that morning. And that evening I was over at Bill Blake's house. Remember I told you about that little weenie? Was always trying to help me. But there I was that evening, 13th of January, knocking on their door. 5-year losers, a loser's loser, smart-ass, smirking, overeducated butt loser. And Margie, Bill's wife, opened the door and saw me on the porch. I have never seen anyone so glad to see me in my life. Can you imagine? This loser. That lady saw me. She lit up. You know, oh, Cliff. Oh, come in. In the house I go. Fusses all around, gives me a cup of coffee. Oh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Bill's been nuts lately. He's had nobody to work with. This is so great. And Bill comes in. Cliff! You know, about a half an hour, I'm thinking, anything else I can do to help you folks out? I'm glad to help any way I can. You know, they made me feel like Cliff's here. We can start AA now. But you know, 3 weeks later, I was in a newcomer meeting, and one of the other newcomers said, "What do you mean this is a selfish program?" And when the guy asked the question, I knew the answer. I found it the night I got here. They were glad for me. They'd been praying for me for 5 years, but they were more glad for Bill and Margie because they knew the great secret. You can't have it unless you give it away. You can't keep it unless you give it away. And my little sponsor had a theory. He believed that everybody who comes to AA has alcoholism and we can take care of that. And this goes for Al-Anon too, by the way. He believed that everybody who comes to AA or Al-Anon also has their own particular kind of and he said that, you know, we have a wrench that'll fit every nut. He also, though, believed that everybody who comes to AA or Al-Anon has some kind of a gift that you could bring to make the program better. Now, all these thousands of people sitting here today are here, and I'm here, and Pat was here today, because about 40 people worked their ass off all year. They brought their gifts so that we could have this thing. I know guys who make the worst coffee in the world, but they do it with such love that you'll love it. You know what I mean? You say, that's really good, see? And there's people, my sponsor was the worst speaker in the history of AA. He was awful. He used to say, I've talked everywhere in AA once. But you put him in the front seat of a car with a newcomer, he was magic. You could not escape him. He was the greatest 12-stepper in the history of the world. When my sponsor died, we had this hall that people were coming out the windows. It was packed. This guy wasn't a speaker or a guru. He was just a great AA. The place was packed, 400 or 600 people. And I got to lead the meeting and said, how many of you here loved Bill? 600 hands went there. How many of you here had a resentment against Bill? 600 hands. He never had a resentment in his life. He was a carrier, you know. Nicest thing he said to me for the next 5 years was, shut up. Can you imagine? I told him, I have degrees, you know. He says, so does the thermometer. You know, they stick that sometimes. Oh, he was so cruel to me, it was unbelievable. We were talking in lunch today, Al-Anon was saying, oh, I don't think that'd work in Al-Anon. I said, probably not. Probably wouldn't work with a lot of AAs. But I know the people that I know in AA that I love and respect, the people I have the most respect for, they all have one word in common, every single one of them: sponsorship. They have been sponsored and they sponsor. And my little sponsor, I thought the first step was, shut up and get in the car. And now looking back after 32 years of sobriety, I realize the first step is, shut up and get in the car. Because nothing happens until you shut up and get in the car. And he drove me everywhere. We went everywhere in Southern California. We went somewhere every night for 2 years. You talk about somebody loving you, huh? We went to a meeting. I thought everybody did. I didn't know the difference. We went to a meeting. He took me to meetings where people were laughing. Because he knew me, see? He knew I couldn't stay here if we weren't laughing. To me, laughter is the spiritual aspect of Alcoholics Anonymous. I read a quote a couple of years ago. This guy said, "Sunshine is the laughter of nature." And I thought, nah. Laughter is the sunshine of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, we do that fourth and fifth step. We turn that rock over. The laughter dries it up and blows it away. Nothing I laugh at will ever come back and haunt me again. Nothing I laugh at will ever come back and bite me in the butt, because now it's funny and I'm through with it. I'd love to get me a new guy, take him to a meeting, take him to another meeting. Then maybe about 10, 11 meetings one night he goes, "Gotcha! I gotcha now, Because if you're new tonight and you've been laughing, you're screwed. Oh, and I'm sitting down there last night when that goofy Scott is talking, and I'm laughing, and the tears are running down my face, and we're all laughing together, and God always comes and whispers in my ear, "It's going to be okay, Cliff. We're laughing now." AAs and Al-Anons laughing together. What a concept, huh? We're laughing at the same things, you know. My wife and I, we get these brand new little Al-Anons. We take them to AA speaker meetings like this, you know. And the speaker's up here and he said, "I fell in the Christmas tree and smashed all the presents." You know, we all go, "Ah!" And this new little Al-Anon sitting there. Not funny to her. So we take her to another meeting tomorrow night, and one night she throws her head back and laughs, and when she laughs, we gotcha. Laughter is the sunshine of Alcoholics Anonymous. Laughter is the spiritual, you know, that's the difference between us and the people downstairs, you know. Spiritual people laugh a lot more. I knew Chuck Chamberlain. I knew him very well because he and my sponsor were friends. And I remember when I was new in 1974, Chuck had gone to Ireland to talk at a convention. And in 74, the troubles were really going on. The Catholics and the Protestants were killing each other like crazy, you know. And Chuck was in this little club in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And a 12-step call came in. So a Protestant and a Catholic went together on the 12-step call because they didn't know which one the guy would be. The others are killing each other, and we're going on 12-step calls together. Nobody ever killed anybody in the name of a spiritual principle. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the freedom of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love to be able to pick my God. And anyway, we went to meetings all over hell. He took me to meetings everywhere. And whatever was wrong in my life, Bill gave me some action to take, which never seemed to match what was wrong in my life. You know, I had kids on drugs. My wife wouldn't go to Al-Anon, and she had a bad mouth. And these kids were all this stuff, and I'd go to each house and pound on the door. "You know what they're doing over there now, Bill? Come in, tell me about it, Cliff." And I'd go through the whole litany, sobbing away, and he would sit and listen. You know how sponsors listen? I've learned once in a while you go, "Huh? Ah. How'd you feel about that? Huh?" But anyway, I'd finally run down. And he would say, "Why don't you go get Al and take him to the meeting?" What the hell has that got to do with a nervous breakdown? It's like asking a guy, what time is it? The horse is dead. But you new guys, remember I told you I didn't have any more answers of my own? I would go get Al. I hated Al. He was a big blowhard. And I'd drive it. He had no driver's license, of course. He was a 10-year loser. I was only a 5-year loser. And I would drive Al to the meeting. Blah, 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 blah. We'd set the meeting up, make the coffee. Everybody'd go home. We'd set the meeting down, wash the coffee. We had real cups in those days. Al had to wash because he was so shaky. He just put his hands in them. But I could dry. When you knew, you got to feel better than somebody. And I'd load the blowhard in the car and drive him home. Blah, 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 blah. And I'd let Al off, and I'd start driving home, and this feeling would come over me. Better than the 8 minutes ever was. Only lasted 40 seconds. Used to scare the hell out of me. It felt so good. You know what I mean? I thought it's because I got rid of Al. You know? But he made me stand at the back door and greet people. I hated it because I'm a snob. You know? Oh, I hated that. How are you tonight? What's your name? Like I really... And we had wall talkers, the old times. Remember the wall talkers, the guys who used to drink too long? They used to sit in the back of the room going, well, every meeting had them, you know. As soon as the meeting was over, he'd say, go talk to the wall talker. I'd go back there, how are you tonight? Good. And he took me on all these 12-step calls, and we went to a meeting every night, and I mopped floors, and I made coffee, and I washed coffee pots, and I washed ashtrays, and I asked you how you were. You know, when I came to AA, all my life I had known exactly what was wrong with me. I've always known what's wrong with me. Probably you knew what was wrong with you, and I'm not being facetious here either. My problem has always been I was never loved enough. You know, raised in that alcoholic zoo. Scott talked about it, that feeling of not being enough. I had never been loved enough in my life. My wife tried, my children tried, my students tried, a lot of people tried. But there was something I didn't know about me that my sponsor knew about me. Now, he never told me because he knew I was too stupid or too brilliant to understand. You know, what's the difference? You're just as dead, you know. What he knew about me was there isn't enough love for a person like me. You haven't got enough. I mean, you got everybody in the world, all the people in China, Russia, everywhere said, let's love Cliff. I'd say, is that it? You know, I'm the black hole of love. Goes in there, you never see it again. And Bill knew that about me, and he knew that my problem was not that I was never loved enough. My problem has always been I never loved enough. I never loved at all. I don't know how to start to learn how to begin to love. So he made me take loving actions against my better judgment. He made me do all those things, and I did them, and I knew he was a fool, and I knew it was useless, and I did them anyway. If you're new tonight, don't have to agree with us. Just do what you're told. Shut up and get in the goddamn car. I cursed. I'm going to catch it in the motel tonight, I'll tell you. See, I know she's right. I should never, ever curse. And I'm sure Scott's mad at me, too. Al got drunk again. He had 11 months and 14 days. and he got drunk again for the last time, and guess who he called? Me. And I went to his house, and I'm saying, just get a shower, Al, come on, get cleaned up, we'll go to a meeting tonight. It's one day at a time, pal. We're going to start over today. Today's the day, Al. And all of a sudden, out of my mouth, I said, I love you, Al. I don't know if Al even heard me, but I heard me, and I knew that it was true. I knew I wanted that man to be sober as much as I wanted to be sober myself, and that's how we measure love around here. You know what we call it? You know what we call love in Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon? We call it service. What a funny word, service. Mother Teresa was in our area a number of years ago before. Of course, before she died. What the hell's the matter? But she had a heart attack, and she was in the hospital there at Scripps. And a couple of AA doctors, one was a cardiologist, a good buddy of mine that took care of her. And they said everything you ever heard about her is true. You know, she's just a spiritual junkie. You couldn't be in the room with her, he said, without feeling the spirituality. But this reporter was talking to her, and she answered him with this little thing, and I cut it out and carried it in my wallet till it fell apart. She said to this reporter, the fruit of faith is love. And the fruit of love is service. And the fruit of service is peace. I will comprehend the word serenity, and I will know peace. The fruit of service is peace. And Scott talked about it magnificently last night. And so my sponsor put me into service, serving you and serving Al, and it worked out that I found out I loved Al. And then Al and I became this primo 12-step team. In those days, you got 3 or 4 12-step calls a week, and Al and I went on all of them. And we did the good guy, bad guy, you know, like cops, you know. We used to almost get in fist fights outside the guy's place. It's my turn to be the good guy. No, it isn't. It's my turn. And we'd go in there and get him, and the one guy, you know, shut your mouth, quit your whining, get your ass to meeting. And the other guy would say, never mind him. Come here. And I grew to love newcomers. First people I ever remember for love, for loving, for fun, and for free was newcomers. And one night Clancy was talking, and he said, treat your kids like newcomers. What a concept. What a great idea. I went home, knelt down, and said, you want the kids, you got the kids. And Pat talked about it this afternoon. All our kids now are middle-aged people. Our eldest daughter was 50 yesterday. Boy, that'll make you feel old when your kid's 50. And she's been a member of Al-Anon for about 17 years. She just went wrong. I don't know what the hell's the matter with her. And our youngest daughter was 7 when we got here, and she's just fine. She just grew up straight in a crooked family. You can't explain her. Our youngest son has 14 years of sobriety. Our middle daughter had almost 12 years and got problems with her back and took pills and then drank. Now she has over 2 years, and she's doing fantastic. Last March, I got to fly to Oregon to a little conference up there and give the hashish salesman his 1-year cake. He's the vice president of an international corporation. He was an agriculture major. He did his Peace Corps in Colombia, for Christ's sake. And he almost died of alcoholism. He did die, literally, of alcoholism a year and a half ago because he's a functioning alcoholic. But he's in the program now. He's doing the steps. He's doing fantastic. So we all get together, you know, like at Christmas, and I'll put my family against any family in the history of the world. This was a family that was destroyed. Alcoholism destroyed me, and it destroyed my wife, and it destroyed my children. But Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, working as a team, have restored our family to where it never could have been. No school of psychiatry could have done what my family, what AA and Al-Anon have done for our family. Last Christmas, my kids are, as they're all middle-aged people, they had this book they had made up for me. By the time I read it, I had to take salt tablets. I cried so much, you know what I mean? My kids don't even have to speak to me, for God's sakes. And they made up this book to tell me how much they love me and how much they respect me and what I've done for them in their lives. I keep it right by my chair at home. You can't get here from there. It can't be done. And all because I had some love and tried to give it away. So if you're new here tonight, I just encourage you to do as you're told. Just shut up and get the call. And great and wonderful things will happen in your life. You know, I usually try to end up my talk by talking about how happy, joyous, and free I am. But you know, the last couple of weeks, I haven't been all that happy, joyous, free. I am so, I mean, it's not even in the same ball game of what I was like when I was a drinker. I'm not the same man I was when I was a drinker. I hope I never have to go back to being that rotten thing again. And but you know, some months are better than others. My wife and I had a real main event the other night. We haven't done that in years and years and years. You know, where you stomp out of the restaurant in a huff. It was a lot of fun, really. I hadn't done it in years and years. No, it was horrible. It was horrible. But my little sponsor taught me the value of love. And one other thing that, of course, Scott talked about it plenty, but my sponsor was believed that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps. Fellowship is great, and all the rest of the stuff is good. Service is wonderful. But unless I take the steps, I'm not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, or Al-Anon for that matter. Thank you. And he didn't believe in talking about the steps, or meditating on the steps, or listening to tapes about the steps, or inserting them into my navel. He believed that you took the steps, you took the actions indicated. They only call for either a definite observable action or a change of attitude, one of the two. Get with it. Do it. And we did it to his satisfaction, not mine. Every time I talk about the steps, I think there's a wonderful old story about the old priest who's back in the sacristy working. And the young priest has been out in front, and the young priest comes running back, and he says, "Father, you'll never guess what happened. You'll never guess." He said, "A young man came in the front of the church, and he was on two crutches, and he took some holy water, and he threw it on the left side, and he threw away the crutch. And then he took some holy water, and he threw it on the right side, and he threw away the crutch." And the old Monsignor says, "It's a miracle. Where's the young man?" He said, "Flatten his ass out by the holy water." Did I make my point? You have to do the steps. You have to do them. And I remember when I was sober almost 2 years, I couldn't sleep one night. Oh, really? And I was reading the big book to get sleepy. The manual works a lot better. Oh, the service manual, that... You just have to read the title page. But I was reading the big book, and I was on page 83 and 84. Now, I had read the book at least 6 times, by then 7 times, and I saw the promises. I had never seen them before. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I saw the promises. You're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. You'll not regret the past in which to shut the... You will comprehend the word serenity, and you will know peace. You know? Fear of financial insecurity will leave us. I love that, huh? It doesn't say financial insecurity will leave us, just fear. And then right, a dirty, sneaky Bill Wilson, right in the middle of the promises, he puts how we do it. He tells us how we accomplish the promises. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we'll see how my experience can benefit others. That feeling, oh, what a sentence. That feeling, singular, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity, same emotion. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. I'm still waiting on that. But then it says our whole attitude and outlook on. So if you want the other promises, you have to do the middle ones. I have to get out of my own way and carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. We're in and out of these rooms, no matter how long you've been sober. When I came here, I needed you desperately. Now it is over 32 years later, and I don't know if there's anybody in this room that really needs me. But I want to tell you something for sure. I sure as hell need you.